Yo, book nerds. I finished reading They Call Her FREGONA, A Border Kid's Poems by David Bowles. This was another cute collection of poetry that follows after They Call Me GÜERO. Even though this is a collection of poems, all the poems kind of come together to form a story, and it is a continuation of GÜERO's story from the first set of poems with a focus on FREGONA, which is GÜERO's girlfriend. There's definitely more of an actual story in this book than the first one, and I think that has to do with it just being like almost 3 times longer than the first book. I do think that I liked the first book a little bit better just because I could relate to more of the poems. If you want to know why I relate to the poems, go check out my first review if you haven't already. I'm not going to go through all that again. There was some interesting things in this one, though. On the dedication page, it says that this book is dedicated to all the brilliant young Fregonas in Eagle Pass who first insisted I write this book. I have been to Eagle Pass. That is the border town that I am familiar with. I've been there. And so that was just kind of cool that the inspiration for this book is from the town that I've been to. This book definitely touches on some important topics. Immigration, ICE, and deportation are a huge part of this story. These poems really dive deep into how families are affected by these things. These poems touch on microaggressions and racism, and it does a really nice job of exploring some very hard topics. One thing that I did like about this, the character GÜERO in here is Catholic, and even though he's Catholic, he is very open and accepting and loving of others and doesn't fall into prejudice like many Catholics that I know. There is a character in here that is non-binary. There is a character in here that is gay. And GÜERO just loves them, and it isn't an issue. And that's the way that I try to behave and live my Catholicism. It's the way that GÜERO lives his Catholicism. And it's the way that all Catholics should be, open and loving and not prejudiced against people. Jesus taught us to love. Anyway, getting a little sidetracked, I don't want this to become about religion, but I really loved that message that religion and accepting others the way that they live don't have to be opposites. They can work together. They can live in peace. You don't really see that nowadays, unfortunately. There was a Guadalupe poem that I really enjoyed because I'm Catholic. There was also a poem about La Llorona, which I also enjoyed because I know that story. But I don't really have much more to say about this because I think you should just get it and experience the poems for yourself. The poems do explore a lot of young love, so it didn't really connect a whole lot with me because I'm not in middle school, because these are middle grade poems. But if you're a middle schooler, you might relate to that part of it. But the love in here was very cute and innocent, I will say that. I do have a couple weird things that happened while reading this book that I want to just mention because they were strange. There is a poem in here about how there is a Mother's Day in the US and then there's a different Mother's Day in Mexico, and they don't always fall on the same date. And ironically, I read that poem on May 10th, which is Mother's Day in Mexico. May 10th is Mother's Day there. So that was really funny and ironic. Like, of all the days in the year that I could read that poem, I read it on Mother's Day, coincidentally. Then I was watching Criminal Minds. It's one of my favorite shows. And they said a quote, and the quote was, "When wounds are healed by love, the scars are beautiful." And that is a quote by David Bowles. It's from a different book than the ones that I'm reading, but as soon as I heard that name, I glanced over because this book was sitting right next to me on the table, and I picked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the same author. That's so weird. Because I've never read David Bowles before, and so these 2 books that I just read are my introduction to him. And then I hear a quote from him on the show that I'm watching. So it's just so weird. My boyfriend said I was a witch. Anyway, just something funny that happened. But if you've read these poems, let me know what you thought of them. I say check them out. I think they're cute. They have a good message to them. I enjoyed them. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. That's all for me this week. I'll see you guys next Monday. Hit like and subscribe, and thanks for talking books with me.